Picture this. You're invited to a wedding in a 1,000-square-meter synagogue, roughly the size of 4 tennis courts. As you enter, the wedding party greets you, shakes your hand, and invites you in. As you look around, you see the walls are painted blue, green, and white, covered in verses from prayers and Tanakh. Along the walls are also etchings of date palms and Egyptian rosettes, the emblem of the Cairo Jewish community. For the wedding, the hall is filled with white flowers. Most people are speaking French as they gather inside. Everyone is dressed in the latest fashions from Italy and France, and the women don gold and jewels. You look outside, and there are 2 parallel rows of girls dressed in all white. They form an aisle for the bride as she arrives in her limousine or sometimes horse-drawn carriage. Children spread rose petals down the aisle as the bride and her father exit the carriage and walk towards the groom, waiting at the entrance to the synagogue. From the 2nd floor, in the women's section, a boys' choir is heard. Then, after the rabbi officiates the wedding, each guest receives a porcelain box filled with candy-coated almonds, adorned with a ribbon. The bride and groom leave with fanfare to their waiting horse-drawn carriage. Now imagine all of this in Cairo, Egypt, in 1920 or even 1940. Hello and welcome to the Sha'ar HaShamayim Synagogue, the main synagogue for the city's middle and upper class, as of its opening in 1905. The synagogue was built on a parcel of land donated by Nissim Mosseri in 1898, in the street then known as El Mughrabi, and today is known as Adli Street, in the once upper-class area of the Ismailia neighborhood. That is why another name given to the synagogue by locals is Kenis Ismailia. Architects Maurice Joseph Katawi and Edward Matasek designed this beautiful structure. At the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, Cairo was made up of Jews from Syria, Iraq, Palestine, Morocco, Yemen, Russia, Italy, Greece, England, of course, Egypt, and many more places. The synagogue was run by the Council Israelite, or the Sephardic Council, who ran the Jewish community of Cairo in parallel to the Karaite and Ashkenazi councils. Rabbi Raphael Aaron ben Shimon, the chief Sephardic rabbi in Cairo in the years 1891 to 1921, described the synagogue as such. There is nothing like it in the whole city. The building is a wonder. Its dome is very high, and the upper walls are covered with verses from Psalms and Tanakh, all referring to the house of God and prayers of Israel.
نشفت بروحك الصامويا صاللوك عفرت بمايم الديريم ميخا موخا بائلي مادوناي ميكا موخا.
There is no corner or point without a design by professional artists. The benches, brought from Europe, were made by top artisans. The whole hall is lit by electric lights of brass. They were cast in France especially for this synagogue. The windows are specifically designed with colors and illustrations from France. And this is only a partial description of this magnificent synagogue. From the outside, the structure is a marvel of architecture. The roof is flanked by 4 towers, one in each corner. They are each topped with 4 small protrusions, or horns, meant to replicate the altar from the temple. Along with the palm trees and Egyptian rosettes, the courtyard entrance is flanked by 2 small obelisks, a miniature of those seen in the temples of Ra and the Washington Monument. In the main sanctuary sits the largest teva in Egypt, made completely of white marble. On each side of the teva are marble columns with Corinthian tops. Across from it, at the steps of the Eichal, sits a large silver Chanukiah. From there, we move upstairs to the women's section that would often be filled. Girls would study the prayers alongside the boys from the early 1900s, and their voices were heard from the top floor throughout the synagogue. This may contrast traditions in other synagogues around the world. However, Rabbi Eliyahu Chazan ruled in the 1800s in Alexandria that women must learn Torah. In fact, he even instituted a bat mitzvah ceremony that was held once a year in Alexandria and once a year at Sha'ar Shamayim in Cairo. The girls who turned 12 that year would dress in all white and be recognized for their entry into the Jewish community. Chacham Ovadia Yosef, who served as the head of the Cairo Jewish Court, or Beit Din, from 1947 to 1949, proclaimed that you cannot prohibit half the Jewish population from praising God, and therefore women were encouraged to sing and study. But the women wouldn't be the only ones singing from the elevated synagogue section. There was a large boys' choir until 1967. However, as the congregation became smaller, the choir moved down next to the Chazan. Speaking of the Chazan, or cantor, he would dress in a traditional Spanish robe. The diversity of the congregation could be seen from their attire, from European tribally hats to the red fez, and many wearing a kippah with no hat. This synagogue became Cairo's main synagogue as the city's community dwindled. However, Sha'ar Shamayim's story doesn't end with the dwindling community. In 1952, with the commander-in-chief of the July Revolution, Muhammad Najib, came to address the congregation on Yom Kippur to show his desire to develop a relationship. The chief rabbi Chaim Nachum Effendi used to pray in this synagogue. By 1967, the Jewish community was almost completely gone. Still, Sha'ar Shamayim has remained an important monument to the world that was. In 1987, international businessman and philanthropist Nissim Gaon, born in southern Egypt, refurbished this synagogue, trying to stay as true as possible to the original. Some of the reconstruction was based on pictures taken by British soldiers who were based there in World War II. In January 1989, the Israeli Academic Center in Cairo, headed then by Professor Shimon Shamir, established the Library for the Heritage of the Jews of Egypt in what was once used as the wedding hall. Then, in 2005, and again in 2023, the Egyptian government refurbished the synagogue and established it as a monument. Today, people can go visit the historical site, although it is no longer used as a synagogue. For just as the glamorous weddings, they are a thing of the past, so is the centuries-old Jewish presence in Egypt. But congregations of Jews from Egypt, dispersed today all over the world, are still praying according to Sha'ar HaShamayim prayers of Cairo.
شن